Good evening. Welcome to Vision of Asia, Voice of the Community, the news you can trust and events that move and celebrate our very own South Asian community. I'm Nidhi Kathuria coming to you from our ITV Gold studio in New Jersey. In the news this evening, fighting runaway inflation, India's strategy explained. Meta seeks to transition from a 2D internet to a 3D internet. 41st India International Trade Fair concludes in New Delhi. Karan Johar's Kal Ho Na Ho completes 19 years. Stay with us on Vision of Asia, Voice of the Community for news in detail right after this short break. India has absorbed COVID-induced shocks far better than most other countries, be it fiscal policy, monetary policy, macroeconomic outlook, or by keeping a constant check on retail and wholesale pricing. India's economic growth has been particularly impressive in comparison to many developed economies who have yet to bounce back from the pandemic and its after effects. Global economic growth is expected to fall drastically over the next 2 years. However, India appears to be bucking the trend, with major international financial agencies like Morgan Stanley praising India's economic acceleration. Take a look.
India has absorbed COVID-induced shocks far better than most other countries, be it fiscal policy, monetary policy, macroeconomic outlook, or by keeping a constant check on retail and wholesale pricing. India's economic growth has been particularly impressive in comparison to many developed economies who have yet to bounce back from the pandemic and its after effects. Global economic growth is expected to fall drastically over the next 2 years. However, India appears to be bucking the trend, with major international financial agencies like Morgan Stanley praising India's economic acceleration. India's retail inflation eased to 6.77% in October, from 7.41% the previous month. Food inflation also decreased by over 1.5 percentage points to 7.01%, from 8.6% a month before. Fuel inflation also experienced a dip, falling to 9.93% from the 10.39% in September. India's strong economic foundation and recent prudent financial decisions have been seen by many as the reason the Indian economy continues to flourish.
It's very unusual to see for almost a year that Indian inflation numbers are lower than developed economy numbers, for example, the US, UK. But that has been the case. One of the major reasons was when the pandemic happened, we did not go overboard on the fiscal stimulus. It was very targeted stimulus to make sure that the poor and the vulnerable do not lose livelihood, they get food on time, etc. But it was not an open-ended X amount of money per month check for everybody.
Shakti Kanta Das, the governor of India's central bank, the Reserve Bank of India, correctly predicted that adhering to the RBI's measures would help contain inflation below 7%. In fact, the Consumer Price Index inflation is predicted to drop to below 6% by the end of the fiscal year. It is such successful policies that have helped India become the world's 5th largest economy. The RBI has raised the repo rate, or the rate at which it loans to banks, to control inflation. The most recent repo rate rise by the RBI was by 50 basis points. India was able to purchase a sizable portion of its oil imports at a lower cost, which also had a positive impact on the country's inflation rates. Although the inflation rates have remained above the RBI's tolerance band of 2 to 6%, they have stayed below 7% and have not so severely affected consumers, as is being experienced in many other parts of the world. The government has also attempted to contain inflation through different means. The government's national monetization pipeline has the potential to release over $73 billion USD by monetizing the assets of public sector units. The government has also made the best use of its foreign exchange reserves to lower inflation by intervening at crucial times to subsidize the price of essential commodities. India's economic plan has helped it recover from the pandemic and its after effects, and many are optimistic that this same foundation will help the country flourish even further. With thanks to its economic principles, policies, and people, the Brand India approach will continue to keep inflation at bay and will continue to protect the needs and well-being of Indian citizens.
Global Affairs President of Meta, Nick Clegg, attended the Global Technology Summit 2022 in New Delhi on November 30th. While answering a question on the future of Meta, Nick Clegg said that the multinational technology conglomerate aims to transition from a 2D internet to a 3D internet. Our big ambition is to be an important player in the construction of what is, in effect, an entirely new computing platform, loosely called the metaverse. We are seeking to make this transition from a 2D internet to a 3D internet, he said. Watch the video.
We are seeking to make this transition from a sort of 2D internet to a 3D internet. These technologies erupted incredibly quickly, spread like wildfire around the world. The governance guardrails shouldn't be retrofitted onto technology.
What is a company like Meta going to look like 10 years from now?
Well, our big ambition, which I think we've been very overt in sort of spelling out to the world, particularly when we announced the new name for the company, Meta, last autumn, is to be hopefully an important player in the construction of what is in effect an entirely new computing platform, what's loosely called the metaverse. I think the sort of shorthand way of thinking about that is that we are seeking to make this transition from a sort of 2D internet to a 3D internet.
How is government and governance going to connect with the metaverse? So how do you see, as metaverse evolves over the next 5 to 10 years, how's that going to change in the way in which governments function, diplomacy happens? How do they plug into this?
Well, I think one of the things I hope, it might turn out to be a somewhat naive hope, but if you look back over the last 15, 20 years, I think we can all accept that, particularly through the social media age, these technologies erupted incredibly quickly, spread like wildfire around the world. You know, our apps and services are used by close to half the world's population now. It's a sort of mind-boggling number. And in many respects, I think we've been almost retrospectively now trying to apply the governance rules to those technologies, you know, not quite as an afterthought, but sort of after the technology's already become so prevalent in society. I mean, here in India, for instance, many of my discussions are this new, you know, sort of tripod of legislation, the Digital India Act, the Telecoms Act, the Data Protection, the DPDP Act. These are all foundational pieces of legislation. The same is happening in Europe, the same debate is happening in Australia, in the UK, in the US. But of course, if you step back for a minute, you think to yourself, well, in an ideal world, those should have come not exactly first, but at the inception of the technologies. The governance guardrails shouldn't be retrofitted onto technology. And so I think one of the things that certainly at Meta we're trying to do is, and we fund many academics around the world, developers. Yesterday I announced that we're helping fund 100 developers in this country on a fellowship to work on some open source developments in the metaverse. What we're trying to do is, in a sense, have those foundational governance debates at the same time as the technology is being developed, so that you don't get this dislocation between technology and governance.
What is your primary concern with regards to the future of data governance, which I think is fair to say we can no longer call global data governance? Would you agree?
I think there is always an underlying danger, particularly at a time, and look, I was in politics for 20 years in European and British politics, I totally understand and respect the wholly legitimate instinct that politicians and governments have around the world to assert what is commonly called digital sovereignty. Of course I understand that. Politicians are accountable to their people. They are there to serve their communities. And quite understandably, politicians feel the world over that they can only serve their community if they somehow insist that they are in charge of their bit of the sort of slice of the data cake, if I can put it like that. The problem, of course, is that that's not the way the internet works. The internet foundationally works on the idea that data flows openly across borders. So I think the balance we're trying to strike in this evolving debate is to ensure that governments, the Indian government is the same as many other governments around the world, are entitled to discharge their wholly legitimate interests in regulating on issues like privacy and content and licensing and so on and so forth, and transparency and accountability, but try and do so in a way which doesn't undermine the ingenuity of the internet, which is undoubtedly based on an immense amount of cross-border, fluid.
The International Trade Fair, which began on November 14th, held at Pragati Maidan in New Delhi, concluded last Sunday. In the mega trade fair, 29 states and union territories had participated along with big corporate and foreign countries. Enjoy the highlights. Continuing with the news on entertainment on ITV Gold, enjoy Suraj Barjatia's family drama Hum Saath Saath Hain, starring Tabu, Sonali Bendre, Neelam, Salman Khan and Saif Ali Khan in the family movie night this Friday at 8:30 p.m. EST. Saturday at 1 p.m. EST, watch Shekhar Kapoor's blockbuster Mr. India, starring Anil Kapoor, Sridevi and Amrish Puri. Reserve is Sunday at 3 p.m. EST to enjoy Hrithik Roshan and Preeti Zinta's blockbuster movie Koi Mil Gaya, directed by Rakesh Roshan. And that's a wrap on Vision of Asia, Voice of the Community tonight. Send us your suggestions and community news that you would like us to cover for our print and television coverage at events@itvgold.com. Follow us on our Facebook handle at itvgold, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and pick up a free copy of Desi Talk if you're in the tri-state or in the Chicago area for community news, entertainment, and events in the U.S. You can also read the News India Times newspaper online at www.newsindiatimes.com or subscribe to the hard copy by calling 212-675-7515. This is Nidhi Kathuria signing off.